Wednesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you're having a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us. It is also day 2 of mandatory minicamp for the Browns out in Berea. They were out on the field today as well. Let's take a look at some of the quarterback action. Dewand Gabriel in team drills. He's going to connect with Dewand Johnson. Good hookup there. Kenny Pickett got some of the first team reps. And Kenny Pickett will find Jerry Jeudy with a crossing pattern as Pickett hooks up with Jerry Jeudy. Pretty nice run and catch. Here's a look at Shedeur Sanders. Red zone. That's a nice pass into the end zone for a touchdown in the red zone portion of it. Joe Flacco got some work in today as well. Little dump off, and that's a good guy to dump it off to. Quinshon Judkins. Shedeur Sanders again. This one in a different drill, but Sanders will hook up with Jalen Gill. Kind of looks off the defenders, throws back the other way to Gill. Take a look at Judkins. This is some speed. And again, little cutback and then gets into the open field, and the big guy can move. A lot of running back drills going on. You see the footwork for Judkins, and fellow rookie Dylan Sampson follows Judkins in the drill. Again, they will wrap up the mandatory minicamp portion of the off-season workout program tomorrow. Then they go away for 7 weeks, and then they come back in July, and it's time to get serious. They put on the pads and everything for training camp that's coming up end of July. Joe Flacco met with media after today's workout. Talked about how practices have changed dramatically, as he was telling his young teammates, since he came back in the league.
It was different, and the difference was that even when it got easier in like 2011, I think, everybody that was playing at that point had been through two-a-days at some point in their life. Guys that come in the NFL now have never done it. They've never done it. We're out there for an hour and 15 minutes, and guys think it's hard. Like our OTAs were over 2 hours for sure in Baltimore, like when I was younger.
Pre-embellishing time?
Yeah, pre-embellishing. I'm not embellishing on that. It was legit. When in 2011 we came back from the CBA, and you could do a max of 3 hours on the field. We did a max of 3 hours. We did that 3 hours on the field. A horn blew, no stretch. A horn blew, we were all ran on the field, and then the horn blew at the end of practice, and we all ran off. And it just doesn't. It's not like that anymore. I do tell the guys. I don't want to go back to that, but there is value in doing that every now and then. There just is.
So the CBA is collective bargaining agreement and limits the amount of time you can spend on the field. But 2 days and 3 hour practice is a thing of the distant past. Dewand Jones, a guy the Browns are counting on to be a tackle. They hope the left tackle. Was asked about last year when he was constantly fighting through injuries and where he's at right now physically.
The main thing is just fighting through pressure or pain that, you're kind of unused to, Most of the time it's just really scar tissue, and you got to really just break that up. And I feel like I did a decent job last year on my right knee, breaking up the scar tissue. But I feel like it started to break down a little bit towards the end of the year. But, I want to do that now with my leg, just how severe it is. And, I just really want to get back to my old self.
And again, Jones trying to do the things that he needs to relative to his weight to be ready to go. And if he's the left tackle and the left tackle of the future, it solves a big question mark for the Browns. Earlier this week, Jim Schwartz made a point of saying this season was going to be a big one for safety. Ronnie Hickman, undrafted free agent, was injured a lot last year. Denzel Ward was asked about Hickman and what he's seen from him.
Oh, yeah, Rodney, he's a Buckeye, so he's going to come in ready. We need more Buckeyes on the team. But, no, Rocket, he's been good since he came on, just coming in, learning the playbook fast, being out there making plays. I always think about his interception he had against the Jets for the playoffs and everything. But, man, he's going to be a good player for us, and he's going to be good.
And Jim Schwartz agrees. So a big season, big opportunity for Ronnie Hickman. All right, let's turn our attention to the Guardians. They were trying to avoid the sweep at the hands of the Reds. Third inning, 1-0 lead, bases loaded, and Carlos Santana unloads them in one swing. A grand slam over the Elk and Elk sign puts the Guardians up 5-0 with the grand slam. Shut out yesterday by the Reds and Andrew Abbott. Ellie De La Cruz came to the plate, top of the fourth. Again, still a 5-0 lead. And De La Cruz, he got all that. Man, that one is headed midway up the bleachers out in left field. A solo home run for Ellie De La Cruz. Let's go to the bottom of the sixth. Guardians, an 8-2 lead. Lane Thomas, the opposite field, and he finds the seats. A 3-run homer to right, 11-2, and that was the final. Allen went 6 innings, gave up 2 earned, struck out 6 to get the win as the Guardians do in fact avoid the sweep. 11-2, they beat the Reds. So the Guardians are off tomorrow. Then they will head out west where they will face the Seattle Mariners Friday. It'll be Gavin Williams taking on Luis Castillo as the pitching matchup Friday in Seattle. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Browns are up first. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We begin by talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's start things out by heading to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave Frank from Cleveland. Real quick question. What do you think about signing the guy the Packers just released, Alexander? He would be compliment Denzel Ward on the other side. Would be back to the Dixon Minifield days, I believe. And you and the family be safe, be good, and God bless you. Love you, brother.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. Tim, I love the idea of another shutdown corner. Alexander hasn't been healthy, and the reason he's a free agent, he refused to take a pay cut. They wanted to cut his pay because he hasn't played, last 3 years really, hasn't played a number of games.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing when it comes to Jair Alexander because he's a guy who's certainly one of the better corners in the NFL when healthy. But that caveat is just that when healthy. I mean, so many times in football you talk about how the best ability is availability, and that just hasn't been there the last handful of years for Jair Alexander. So when I look at where the Browns are, actually, I think with corner, they're in a pretty good spot as far as depth goes. I mean, you have your 3 starters if you go nickel and Ward, Martin Emerson, and Greg Newsome, and then you have the depth back there with Cameron Mitchell as your 4th corner. I think if you're going to add guys, I would look more, adding more depth at receiver. I know they just signed Deontay Johnson, but I just think, with where the roster is, corner is still one of your deepest positions if you're the Browns. So would it be nice to get Jair Alexander, especially if it's a small, prove-it kind of 1-year contract? Sure, no question about it. But I would feel like, if they were going to add to the roster, there'd be a couple other areas they would go besides trying to build on what's already a strength.
It's kind of interesting. Some have suggested that the Browns have some depth at cornerback, and they might trade Green Bay for their depth at wide receiver. Again, I don't know that I'd be in a big hurry to get rid of Greg Newsome or Martin Emerson. I know they're in their final year of the contract, et cetera, but you're going to need that defense to be really good this year if you're going to win some games.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason both guys are sticking around. Martin Emerson obviously had that down year last season. This is a proven year for him because he plays well. He probably should get a nice contract extension. And especially if we saw the Martin Emerson that we saw in 22 and 23, then yeah, I think we'd be looking at a pretty decent payday. As for Newsome, same kind of deal. It's going to be interesting to see how those two guys, perform this kind of season. We typically, there's so many cases in pro sports in the NFL and no different, where guys on those, final year of their rookie contracts, they really elevate themselves. So if that's the case, then you should get potentially some of the best play that these two guys have had in their careers to this point.
So Denzel Ward was asked about the defense and what he feels will be a strength of this defense.
And just the camaraderie. Like, we all know each other, and we all get along and love playing with one another. And just all of our competitive mindset. Like, we all want to win. We all want to be great. We come out here, we push each other every day, and we're just looking to be the best corner group, defensive group in the NFL, and that's our main goal, and that's what we go work towards.
Tim, when you look at it on paper, they should have been a lot better than they were last year, I think. There were a number of guys that had disappointing seasons that need to rebound. A couple of them we talked about, Newsome and Emerson.
No question about it. I agree with you. The defense was not as good as it needed to be last season. I do argue that I think a good amount of it had to do with the offense being as bad as it was, that it kept putting the defense in bad spots again and again and again. And as I said a amount of times, there's no defense in NFL history that is going to be able to be consistently elite, if their offense is kind of putting them in bad positions over and over again. Offenses these days are just too good in the NFL where you're going to give up points. The rules naturally favor the offense. So if you're putting your defense in a bad position where they're getting very minimal rest, you're either going 3 and out on a regular basis or you're turning the ball over, especially in your own territory, there's only so much the defense is going to be able to do. So the best thing that can happen for the defense is if the offense scores some points, gives them a lead, and then they can lean on their strength, which is that pass rush, and allowing that defensive line with Myles, Garrett, and those guys to really get after the quarterback much more, not necessarily having to worry about the run as much. And when you are able to generate pressure on a more regular basis, that's when those turnovers typically happen.
So this is from Mike Florio, Chris Sims, Pro Football Talk, talking about the Browns quarterback competition.
As we said a couple of weeks ago, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. If you have 5 quarterbacks, you're the Browns. And I don't want to just pile on the Browns because there is an easy target, but it speaks to the dysfunction that you would have that many quarterbacks where you can't distribute enough reps to the young guys to get them properly developed. What the hell are they going to do here? What are they going to do at training camp with Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dillon Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders? And meanwhile, Deshaun Watson is lurking and rehabbing. And what are they going to do when he shows up with a clean bill of health and says, play me?
I know. They got some things to think about. Now, all these things that we hear and all that, yeah, they kind of give me the inclination that they're not thinking about starting any of these rookie quarterbacks to start the year. That's for sure. It'll be a Flacco or Kenny Pickett type of thing. That's at least the way, reading between the lines and what we've seen and heard through training camp, that's what it seems like to me.
So, Tim, every time I hear somebody talk about, you have 4 what are they trying to do with 4 or 5 quarterbacks? They're trying to find one of the 5 that can give them average NFL quarterback play. If you have 4, you have a better chance of getting one of them that can play than if you have 2, because none of them are blowing anybody away.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about the 5th, Deshaun Watson. Considering he just had the re-rupture of his Achilles, it's typically a 12-month injury. I mean, if you're going off that basis alone, I mean, him playing in 2025 feels like a long shot just based solely on what we know about, the timeline for Achilles injuries. So going now to, obviously, what the Browns are going through in practice, I've said before that unless one of these rookie quarterbacks is just so much better than Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett, simply because of the schedule they have to start the season, I'd be stunned if Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett is not the week 1 starter. And obviously Joe Flacco, having kind of a quieter day number 1, if you're the Browns, you don't really need to see as much of him. You know what you have in Joe Flacco. You know exactly what he looks like in this system because we just saw it in 2023. We saw him come off the couch and lead the Browns to a surprising playoff run. Yeah, it didn't end well, but he still got him there, and he still played very good football. Although, as I said before, the advanced metrics really showed regression was coming, and that kind of came to a head in the playoff. As for the 2 rookies, you got to take dart throws, and I said in a podcast, the Orange and Brown Talk after the draft that you came into that weekend with 0 future at quarterback, and taking 2 dart throws in Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, even if it's like a 5 to 10% chance that either guy is the long-term option, I'd rather take 5 to 10% over 0%, because at least at 5 or 10%, it's like the odds that back in the day when you got like a Pepsi or whatever, one of those is like 1 in 12 wins a free bottle, and you unscrew the cap and it's got the code. That's essentially what you're looking for right here. And you got no chance to win if you don't enter the game. That's just the way it works.
So we're looking for our starting quarterback on Pepsi Tops. Okay. If it works, all right. You mentioned Joe Flacco. Got some reps in the team drills today, didn't get any yesterday. Flacco, after practice, asked about the lack of reps that he's getting.
The plan is, but exactly. But, I trust Kevin and that he has a plan for all this. And, that's really all I can do. Listen, I'd love to go out there and take 120 reps a day and get in the groove and do all those things. But like I said, the coaches have a plan, Kevin has a plan, and my job is to just trust that, go out there and do the best I can.
And again, they're in shorts and helmets. So the reps at this level are to learn what the offense is supposed to be doing, progressions and those kind of things.
And Joe Flacco doesn't need those reps. Like I said, so many of the guys he played with in 2023 are still here. The interior of that offensive line, the same as 2023. He was thrown to David Njoku, a little bit to Cedric Tillman. Yeah, he's got some new running backs to work with, but he's also played with Jerome Ford, and he's familiar with the system. So, like I was saying, this mini camp and the OTAs are really about getting Kenny Pickett familiar with the system and doing the same thing with Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, while at the same time getting them acclimated to the speed of pro football. Yeah, they're not going to really get a full taste of it till they get into an actual regular season game, and that's 3 months away. But this is making sure that you got the controllable things done, then where your keys are, the play call, the minutia of the offense, so that when things are going 100 miles an hour, you're more reacting than you are thinking. And like I said, with Joe Flacco, he's already got that down. The guy's been in the NFL for almost 2 decades, so this is a guy who's seen it all, done it all. He doesn't need the reps that these other 3 guys need.
So another thing that has been evident, pace of practice and how they're going about practice. And so Dewand Jones was asked about the difference between practices last year before, and this season.
Just being tough and competitive, and I think it just carried over to everybody this year, whether you on vacation working out, but everybody's going to be tough about it. They're going to do their business and, make sure they come back in best shape. And if you're here, you're being tough and competitive versus your teammate.
And again, we talked a little bit earlier, there are constraints by what you can do relative to the Players Association. They needed more competitive, more physical, and I hope it continues into training camp.
100%. When you're 3-14, for whatever reason, we've talked so many times about 3-14, why they were that bad, but the reality is what they were, and you have to create that extra urgency. So it's clear, based on the way Kevin Stefanski's talking, the fact that they revamped the training staff, what Dewand Jones is talking about is that increased urgency. There's reason behind it, not just the fact that you're trying to bounce back from a bad start, from a bad season last year, but you had this ridiculous 6-week stretch of the season where, I think as I said last week, you can make an argument that the road game in Pittsburgh might be one of the easiest games of the first 6 to start the season. That tells you how difficult this schedule is. So you want to do your best to hit the ground running, and the best way to do that, make practices tough. It's the old adage of make practice tougher than the games. It's so difficult to do at the pro level, like you said, with the constraints in practice, training camp, the things, the CBA limits, only 3 preseason games, only so many times you can get in pads. But to create that urgency, to create that competitiveness within the locker room, it feels like the best way to try and do that. And if you have that urgency right from the beginning of the season, maybe it's a chance to steal an extra win or 2.
Tim Bielek and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk more about the offense. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielek from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Andrew Siciliano, play-by-play voice of the Browns, with a word of caution about judging the quarterback competition as we sit here in June.
The reality of what this quarterback competition is going to be, and then kind of the way that it's playing out for some of the fans in terms of how they think it's going to go. And we've given them the real truth. But I think kind of what you saw today gives you a pretty good example of the way that the coaches view this thing.
Yes, you need the young guys to get the work. You need Kenny Pickett to get the work. And to your point, and you and I were talking off the air, I need to pump the brakes for everybody and ask for patience and caution and wait until September. I talked about this with Jack Conklin. It'll be a best pod available coming up, I think, maybe tonight. It's June. Yeah. No one makes a quarterback decision in June. Mm-hmm. And no rookie, I mean, save for like a number 1 overall pick, has ever won a quarterback competition in June when there are veterans in the room. I don't care where you're picked. Jaden Daniels was named the starter last year. Caleb Williams was named the starter last year. Now, what Matt Eberflus did was name Caleb the starter right out of the gate. He was the number 1 overall pick, but that you don't see that often.
No.
We don't have 2 number 1 overall picks here. Right? We're not going to replay the draft or relitigate the draft.
Yeah.
You have to win that job in August and September.
Yeah, and Tim, to sit there and try to make sense of it in June based on, I see these stats and these touchdowns. It's like counting home runs at batting practice. They're in shorts and helmets. This is football's version of batting practice. They're supposed to be able to do what they're doing, throwing the football.
Yeah, it'd be much more concerning if it'd be more of an alarm if these guys weren't playing well in this time of year than if they were, than to be excited if they were playing well. These are designed for the offenses to really excel, for those for the quarterbacks to look good. And to their credit, especially with Shedeur Sanders, being where he's on the depth chart, he's made some nice throws. It seems like Kenny Pickett, Dillon Gabriel, and Joe Flacco all have also had their moments. So all these guys have really taken turns to make some things happen. But the real test is going to be in August, when the pads come on. So many people say that, that's when practice really starts, is when you get the pads on, these guys go full speed. That's when these 2 rookies in particular are going to get a taste of what the real NFL speed is like. Then you have the joint practices with the Eagles and the Carolina Panthers. So many things have to happen before you can really evaluate a quarterback competition. This is just, like we said in the last segment, this is still kind of the install and tweaking phase of the program where you're getting timing down with all these different guys. It's supposed to be leaning towards the offense having success, and if it doesn't, that's a bigger problem.
So when do you think we get an idea of how this quarterback pecking order is lining up?
I would say middle of the preseason would probably be the best, like the absolute bare minimum, like target date where you pick a guy. I don't think you can go into the end of the 3rd preseason game and say, this is our guy. You want to get, through those sorts of things. You want to get through those joint practices, like I was saying, having at least the vaguest idea of who QB1 is. You can't go into that second set of joint practices still trying to decide who your quarterback is, because you got to turn around from that after the 3rd preseason game, then roster cuts, and then get ready for Cincinnati in week 1. Granted, you've had success against the Bengals in the past, but that's not guaranteed. You got to go earn it again, especially after being 3-14. So yeah, you can do all these things for the competition, but at some point, the cream's going to rise to the top, especially in training camp. And you're going to have to make a very difficult decision early if you're Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, who you're going to lean on and who's going to be your guy going forward. Are you going to go with Joe Flacco, or are you going to go with the guy you grabbed first in the offseason, Kenny Pickett, or one of these 2 rookies? I think you do have to find that time at the very least after the Eagles joint practices to be like, this is our guy. We're sticking with him. We're going forward, and we're going to see where this goes, because the longer you drag this out, the less time you have to truly prepare for the start of the regular season.
All right, so last year, Deontay Johnson, wide receiver, played for 3 teams, one of them twice. It really didn't end well for Johnson with most of those teams. He was asked about last year today.
Sure, I don't like to speak on a lot of stuff, so I just, everybody gonna have their opinions, you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I'm the only one in that room and really know what be going on, so I can only I'm saying everybody, like I say, they entitled to their own opinion. So I can only go off of what I know and then try to go off what I, can put out there, like in my best effort. But like I said, last year, I'm trying to change that narrative and move the right way and just keep going, bro.
So Tim, there's an opportunity here, and I'm not sure he realizes he has the opportunity to probably be the second wide receiver if he just comes out and plays like he's capable of. Do all the right things. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he can't play in the NFL. We've seen him put up very nice numbers. Even look at his numbers. He has four consecutive seasons of at least 700 yards, including a season of 1,161 yards with the Steelers back in 2021. So Deontay Johnson could play some football. We're not talking about a guy who, is a guy who just has never had success out there. He's been successful. But I do think, with the way last season was, again, playing for three different teams, I do think there's got to be a little urgency on his part. Obviously he's kind of saying, he's got to worry about his own, saying what he's saying about, just got to worry about his own stuff. But I do think you got to have a little urgency because there's opportunity for him to really get out there and go make something and really give himself a second chance with his career. Because if it doesn't work out in Cleveland, could this be the end of the line for Deontay Johnson? The guy's talented, but you got to have the ability to stick somewhere.
Yeah, and he admitted that the Browns were the only team that showed interest in him this offseason. All right, Cedric Tillman, Michael Woods, not involved in on-field activities again today. How concerned are you that Tillman and Woods haven't been able to practice? Both of them had some injury concerns coming into this offseason. And do you think there could be a trade for a wide receiver?
I don't know about how concerned I am with Cedric Tillman. I do think you want to give him as much time because remember, he had the fact that he missed 6 games with a concussion to end last season, it's worrisome. Usually concussions obviously will take a guy out usually for a game or two, but C6, it's, worrisome. So you hope he's okay. And the Browns, we know, are an organization that historically, especially under Kevin Stefanski, likes to operate under the standards of abundance of caution. So you hope Cedric Tillman's okay. Michael Woods, hopefully we've seen flashes from him, but just not been able to get on the field consistently. As far as adding a receiver, I know, Keenan, like I mentioned Keenan Allen, I'm not sure off the top of my head if he's still available, but that is a position where I still have some concern as far as depth goes, especially if Deontay Johnson doesn't pan out the way you kind of hope he does, if that lottery ticket doesn't pay off and he doesn't look like the guy that, we saw at the beginning of his career in Pittsburgh. So yeah, there's questions. I have a receiver, but I'm not super worried about Tillman and Woods not being out there again until training camp, because really, you want to make sure your guys are getting acclimated to the system. And for the Browns, you're trying to work back towards more of a 2 tight end style with David Njoku and Harold Fannin Jr. being your top 2 guys there.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns and OTAs, mini camps, and training camps. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So Kenny Pickett, the quarterback, was asked how things are going for him in this mandatory minicamp.
Every day, you have to take it a day at a time. We're installing new things every day, so you may get that play that you haven't run one time. You have to take advantage of it. So I think it's gone really well so far.
How much of building that bond is organic, and how much you as a quarterback further things for chemistry and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's always organic. I think in football, everyone, we're all doing the same thing. We're all on the same mission. This is a great locker room to be in. So just being able to hang out with guys outside of football, outside of the field. Whether it's on the golf course, in the cafeteria, getting a bite to eat, whatever it may be. I think it's always a good time to get to know your teammates.
So, Tim, the reports continue that Pickett has been like the first guy in team drills and all those kind of things. Do you read anything into that at this time of year?
No, not really. I mean, we're like we said before, you're in the phase of the offseason where guys are trying to still pick up the offense and really put it out there on the field as opposed to just doing it in film study or, wherever they're working out on their own, putting it out there in front of the coaches on film with teammates. I think that's more significant right now. And, it's the real telling order is going to be a couple of days into training camp, how this all gets sorted out. Kenny Pickett, as you would expect, because he's a veteran, because he has starting experience, you would expect he's going to be earlier in the order because he's proven that he can have success at the NFL level. He hasn't obviously been great, but he's had enough success where naturally, because he's a veteran, you're going to give them dues early on. You're going to give them respect by giving them a little more opportunity because they understand how a regular season NFL game works, how that looks and all those sorts of things, how to prepare. And then the rookies kind of fall behind, so you're not overwhelming them. You're not throwing way too much at them, putting too much pressure on them. And that's where I think, I think it's fine where Kenny Pickett is in the order between those guys. But ultimately, like I said, when it comes down to training camp, it comes down to just how those guys practice and how they perform, when action's live. That I think is going to be more telling than anything.
Two things that stand out about Pickett, and we showed this last week. He's 15-10 as a starter. Of those 15 wins, 6 of them are fourth quarter come from behind wins, comeback wins. That's a lot. And the other thing, doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Those are two things that go under the radar. Now, I know he hasn't thrown for a lot of yards. I know he hasn't thrown for a lot of touchdowns. But you're trying to win games.
Yeah, and that's a tried and true formula in the NFL. I mean, I've talked about so much with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the formula of don't turn the ball over and hit those high leverage splash plays when it matters most. And Kenny Pickett did that, for his 2 seasons in Pittsburgh. Yeah, he didn't put up great numbers, but in situations where he had to have it, there's plenty of times out there, despite some of the issues the Steelers have had with their offense, whether it's scheme or personnel, that he's gone out there and made plays. Now, I'm not saying the Browns' offense is drastically better than Pittsburgh's, but this is a scheme where we've seen in the past that more often than not that Kevin Stefanski has been able to get something out of these quarterbacks. But the problem with the last 2 years has been turning the football over. So you can see I've said before, you can see the appeal with a guy like Kenny Pickett, who's going to protect the football and play into what you hope is more of a ball control style of offense, where you're able to run the football with your two rookie running backs, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, and then, of course, the veteran Jerome Ford, grind games down, and then hit play action. Obviously, you would like your quarterback to really be able to be more aggressive, but certainly there's value in protecting the football, and I think that, from my own viewing it from the outside as I kind of have, is where I think Kenny Pickett does. That is where his biggest calling card is. He's not going to put you in positions that are going to hurt you.
So today, after everybody was done with team drills and practice officially over, Shedeur Sanders took some extra reps out working on things with some of his wide receivers, trying to get some extra work in. We have heard that has been his MO and the way he has operated, and there you see it. There aren't many people on the practice field, and he's just kind of doing some work, throwing on the run and extra work. So again, 5th round pick has done nothing but work hard and try to pick up the offense. So all good signs from what you're seeing from Shedeur Sanders.
I think it's what you want as an organization when you have a draft a quarterback. How many times has it been said? You want a guy who's the first one in the building and he's the last one out of the building. And, for whatever perception people have had of Shedeur Sanders, it seems like he has come in and absolutely done and said all the right things. I've felt this whole draft cycle that I felt like the perception of Shedeur is very different from the reality of Shedeur. And I think we're seeing, the reality of Shedeur really stand out. Like the best qualities of him right now are really coming through. It seems obviously he's, practicing very well. He's accepting his role right now of just, learning the offense, being patient, and, trying to take advantage of what our opportunities are there, and just trying to be a good teammate. And obviously, like you see in those clips, working hard. Those are the things you expect of quarterbacks, and he's doing those things. And obviously, going as late as he did, it seems like it's put a fire under him to really, make sure he's doing the things that have to be done to make sure he can have success in the NFL. And it's a good sign for the Browns that he's doing those things right now, especially so early in the offseason. And, even a few weeks into it, that he's still continuing to do those things.
Yeah, and he said it. He said, I want to be ready. He said it yesterday. I want to be ready when my time comes. So that's how you get ready to perform when you get the opportunity. Joe Flacco was asked yesterday. Myles Garrett was talking about how excited he was to hear that the Browns had re-signed Joe Flacco. Flacco was asked about that. He's heard that from a number of the Browns.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about relationships and teammates, and listen, it feels good to have players to feel that way about guys, and to maybe have sense that maybe you're felt like that towards a little bit too. Just because we're all trying to be good football players, and usually when you get those feelings towards guys, it means that you're working hard and doing those right things. And it always feels good for someone to kind of pep you up and say, hey, man, you did a good job. So when you have good relationships, it's another version of that.
Well, and Tim, what it says is Myles Garrett and those guys believe that Joe Flacco can help them. That's the quality. That's quality number one in a quarterback. You want everybody around them to believe, hey, we're good. It's Joe Flacco, or hey, we're good. It's Shedeur Sanders, or hey, we're good. That's what you want in a starting franchise quarterback.
I mean, they have reason to believe. I mean, look at what happened in 2023. Like I said, coming off the couch the way he did, coming to a team where he barely knew the system and really leading them on a magical run to get into the postseason. When you see it, it's much easier to believe it. When you have a track record like Joe Flacco has, where, he's got a Super Bowl ring, that he knows how to win those types of games, and he's had all kinds of success in the NFL. It's pretty easy to follow behind a guy who's got that proven track record. And obviously, Joe Flacco is certainly much older than the other three guys in the Browns quarterback room right now, but when you got a guy who's got a proven record for success, it's easy to follow along with that guy, versus the other guys, you just have to see it in practice, and you really don't get that sense of what those guys are until they get into the game. So that's why I keep feeling like Flacco, in my own personal opinion, based off just, what I read out, just based off the reporting that's coming out of camp, that's why I really think he still, to me, in my own personal opinion, feels like a guy who's most likely to start, just because team believes in him and he's proven he can go out and get the job done. And, if he plays well, it buys more time for, the rookie quarterbacks to develop. And if there's a point where you need to go to one of those two guys, the more Flacco plays and the more he plays well, the more you kind of have that cushion where while you still need to figure out what those two guys are, if you can win some games along the way and then, get your verdict on those two rookies, I mean, that might be the best of both worlds potentially.
Yeah, the way I kind of look at it is either Pickett or Sanders or Dylan Gabriel are going to have to do something that makes you say, man, this is our guy.
Yeah, and obviously, that's why I said, it would be up to one of those three guys to be better than Joe Flacco by not just a little, but by a decent amount to steal the job from him. I mean, Joe Flacco can just, you see the proof in 2023 of what he did with that offense. Yeah, he threw plenty of interceptions, including the 2 pick sixes in the playoff game. But then you also see he threw a bunch of touchdown passes. He had that big comeback in the fourth quarter against Chicago to steal that game, the amazing game he had against the Jets to clinch the playoff spot. All that stuff is out there, and it's going to be up to one of those other three guys to basically, really have an even better training camp than Joe Flacco to prove that, that they are just that it's clear as day, because they played well more than Joe Flacco not practicing well, that they deserve the right to be the starting quarterback. That's what I think makes this quarterback competition so interesting, that even though it's certainly more likely they go with a veteran, you never know what it's going to look like till the pads come on, until they actually get into preseason games and joint practices.
Tim Bielek from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Tim Bielek, make sure you check him out, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Dalton Wasserman from PFF straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. Dalton, I know PFF did something. One reason for optimism for every team ahead of the 2025 season. For the Browns, Myles Garrett. So take us through kind of the thought behind that.
Yeah, I mean, really, the thought is when you have arguably the best defensive player in football, your front seven is always going to be pretty good, right? It's the best part of this Browns team. It was the best part of the Browns team again last year. Top 5 in pass rush grade for us, top 5 in run defense grade for us. And a lot of that is because of Myles Garrett and how good he is, right? 4 straight years with at least a 90 PFF grade. That's very, very rare that you see that. So obviously one of the best defensive players, honestly, in NFL history. And he's so good that he makes all the guys around him better. So as long as Garrett is out there healthy and playing like Myles Garrett, the Browns front seven is a problem for opponents to block every week.
And I know you're really familiar. You do the college football show. What does putting Mason Graham next to Myles Garrett do for the Browns, for Garrett, and for the Browns defensive line?
Yeah, I think it's another guy when you're talking about if you're going to double and triple team Myles Garrett all the time, Mason Graham is going to win a lot of one-on-one matchups. That's what he did at Michigan. And I know the thought is, well, he didn't get a whole lot of sacks, but that's because Michigan's defensive line was so good that quarterbacks just had to get rid of the football by any means necessary. And it's going to get fun with Graham because at Michigan, he lined up in all different places. It could be off the edge. It could be inside, standing up, three-point stance, all over the place in obvious passing situations. He's a really good athlete. He was our highest graded run defender in the entire country last season. So it's going to help even further with that run defense and taking more of that pressure off of Garrett and some of those other guys. If Graham becomes a superstar, then you're talking about a dynamic on this defensive line that's extremely hard for anybody to block, no matter who the opponent is with their offensive line. When you have an inside threat and an outside threat and a guy, like I said, at Michigan, they kind of used him like Chris Jones, moving him all around the line of scrimmage and pass rush situations. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch those two guys in tandem, both against the run and the pass.
When you look at the Browns, they have Denzel Ward in the back half. Schlesinger, a guy that is pretty athletic that they're bringing in because JOK won't play. How good can this Browns defense be, in your opinion?
I think it can be solid as long as the offense doesn't put him in bad spots. I really think that's what it comes down to is two things. One, the offense putting him in not terrible spots and going 3 and out all the time. And two, improvement from that cornerback room, especially with Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome. If at least 2 of those 3 guys can play better than they did last year, you're talking about probably a top 8 to 10 defense in football with arguably the best defensive player in football, Myles Garrett. The rookies, like you just mentioned, can both be impact players, and better play from the cornerbacks would help a lot. Maybe Jim Schwartz gets away from all the man-to-man coverage he used last year, but I think that's really what it comes down to. If they're a little bit better in the secondary, that could be probably a top 8 defense in the league as long as their offense doesn't put them in bad field position sort of spots.
One of the areas that Jim Schwartz mentioned last week that they're focusing on is improving their ability to create turnovers. Denzel Ward, with some of the things they're doing with that in mind.
Just jugs, catching the ball, and our coaches, they do a good job of setting up drills for us to practice getting interceptions and working through that contact that you're going to feel in the game and catching the ball.
So, Dalton, can you how do you create turnovers? I guess that's the big question. And if you had the right answer, you'd probably be a very highly sought-after defensive coordinator.
Well, the answer for it, as always, I think, really part of it is the pass rush and Myles Garrett, everything that happens to disrupt quarterbacks in the pocket. But again, it comes from better play in the secondary. This was a team that was last in the league in interceptions last year, and Denzel Ward often had his hands on the football. He was among the league leaders in pass breakup, so he was getting to the football, just not finishing plays with interceptions, right? So it really, Dave, just comes down to practice habits. These are things that you do all throughout the summer. You do it every week during the season, punching the football out to find fumbles, right? Catching the football instead of just batting it away for interceptions, getting strip sacks instead of just tackling the quarterback. It's just that extra level that you have to create habits of throughout practice. So it's really good to hear Denzel talk like that, because when you're talking about a team with such a talented defense, yet they were last in the league in interceptions and third to last in takeaways. That's really a part of the game where you have to change the game and make life for your offense easier, like we talked about the alternative before. So I do think a lot of times the takeaways, it comes with, there's a little bit of regression to the mean that can happen when you have this talented a defense. It can come back to at least an average level, but you have to emphasize it throughout practice and all throughout the summer to prepare for the season.
So former NFL quarterback Chase Daniel with his thoughts about the Browns quarterback competition. This is from FS1's The Facility.
When you have 4 potential starting quarterbacks, you have none. And you can't even begin to evaluate these 4 guys unless they're getting first-team reps. Shedeur was talked about last week, not getting any first-team reps. I don't know if Dylan has or not, right? It's Flacco and Kenny Pickett. But if you're saying it's an open competition, cut it down to 2. And I don't think that cut down to 2 for actually competing for the starting job will come until game. So it's too early to tell. So I hate that for the team, because evaluation, it's hard to evaluate quarterbacks in shorts and helmets on June the 10th, right? I think you can separate yourself. And the reason why I love it specifically for Shedeur Sanders, right? Going into the draft, he was on this mountaintop. He was supposed to be the number 1 or number 2 best quarterback in the draft. He was supposed to do this. He was supposed to do that. And look, I think some people tore him down. He slid to the 5th round. There was some anonymous sources, which I absolutely hate. We can all agree he's not a 5th-round talent. His talent is somewhere in the 1st, 2nd round. So when you get a guy like that, now he has the opportunity to work himself back up, right? He was sort of humbled, to say the least, by some people out there that decided, hey, we don't think you deserve to go in the 1st, 2nd round.
So, Dalton, again, I've heard this a couple of times. If you have 4 quarterbacks, you have none. If you have 4 quarterbacks that are kind of mediocre, don't you give yourself a better chance of finding one of them that does what you need them to do?
Well, it's good to have depth at any position for sure. So if 2 or 3 of them end up being at least useful players for him this season, or if one guy can start all 17 games and have some level of success, and I think any of those are good scenarios. And as far as cutting it down, look, I don't think we're going to see that till probably another 2 months from today. This really is maybe the widest competition we've ever seen at quarterback of any team ever. So, I mean, you're talking about 4 guys who you could at least draw some sort of path to a starting job, because all 4 of them have their flaws for certain reasons, or you have the 2 draft picks, that were taken in the 3rd and 5th round. It's never an easy road for those guys either, right? So I think what you're talking about, look, the cut down's going to happen. I would say probably by the 2nd week of preseason, it will be down to 2 guys, whether it's both veterans or 1 rookie and 1 veteran. I doubt it would be Gabriel and Sanders, considering Flacco and Pickett were brought in. But I think what you have is just, you can't get impatient. Kevin Stefanski has to evaluate this every single day with an open mind, and whoever the best player is going to come out on top. I think he's just going to go with whoever gives him the best chance to win ball games.
So let me ask you this. If the Browns get average quarterback play, and I know that's a big if right now, how many wins do you think they get?
I mean, average quarterback play, let's say something like the 20th best quarterback in football, let's say, with their defense, and I know the weaponry is either extremely young like it is at running back, or a little bit thin like it is at receiver, but I think if they ever got average quarterback play with their defense, you could see a scenario where they get maybe to 7 or 8 wins. It would really depend on the offensive line protecting any or all of these guys too. But I think you could see a scenario where 7 to 8 wins happens, but they're very young on offense. They're very thin at wide receiver beyond Jerry Jeudy. So there's still work that needs to be done. And next offseason, we're going to be talking about the offensive line a lot. So the entire offense, not just the quarterback spot, is a work in progress. But with their defense, if they got relatively average quarterback play, I would say they could maybe hover around that 500 mark at the most.
Dalton Wasserman from PFF and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns, mix in a little AFC North news as well. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. We're going to change paths a little bit, talk a little bit about the Bengals in the AFC North. So number 17 pick overall, Shamir Stewart from Texas A&M, holding out. The Bengals he will not be part of any on-field activities during mandatory minicamp, doesn't have a signed contract, and that's the issue. The Bengals this year, for the first year, have changed their language in rookie contracts that takes away some of his guaranteed money in the event of injury. Here is Shamar Stewart on what's going on with him and the Bengals.
I still go to meetings. I still study my playbook, take down the right notes, and then whenever I get some free time, I go out to train at Black Sheep.
Is it fair to say at this point that you will not step foot on the practice field in practice until you're signed?
Yes.
Good question.
Very bad. I mean, I've been doing this for most of my whole life, and then all of a sudden it's gone over something very simple to fix. It's kind of disappointing.
Have they given you any answers as to why they're choosing this year and you to set a new precedent?
If I really wanted to say, I can't say what I really want to say, but it's their contract. They can do what they want with it.
Again, that is Bengals first-round pick, Shamir Stewart, and not signing his contract because they have taken out the guarantees in the standard rookie contract for the first time this year. As you might imagine, plenty of fans want to talk about that as well. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. I was just sitting here thinking about how the Bengals are having a lot of trouble with their first-round pick, Shamar Stewart. And if they're going to continue to, try to nickel and dime him, why not have the Browns give him a call and try to take him off their hands? Maybe offer Isaiah McGuire and a second-round pick or some type of trade package for him. I know it's a long shot, but if they're going to continue to play games with the guy, why not see if they can do something with him? Because he really doesn't have any connection with the organization because he's technically not signed. Just my thoughts, but hopefully we'll have a good season this year. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Dalton, I wanted to set that up for you so you see where it's going. It's bizarre that I wouldn't sign that contract either.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, when they're all of a sudden making changes, and I wonder if it's not just Stewart, if they would have done it regardless of who they had picked, if they just decided this was the year they're going to change contract language. But I'm also sure that Stewart might be hearing some things maybe from the players' union that they go, okay, hey, if you're the first one that signs a deal like this and all, it's going to be a domino effect of everybody else doing it. So there may be a larger battle at play here. But as far as Stewart and the way he's being even handled on the field or not being on the field for the Bengals, I mean, this is a player, look, he's an athletic athletic freak. He had one of the greatest combines we've ever seen, but he needs polish on the field. He needs to work on his technique and get practice reps and things like that at an NFL level. He's not the most polished player yet, so they're only doing more damage to their football team by not having him out there and figuring this out and having him on the practice field with his teammates, right? So look, it's hard not to sympathize with Stewart because of, all of a sudden, okay, you get backdoored with this contract language that's different from what every other player in the league is getting. I totally get the reasoning behind him holding out, but for a Bengals team that is trying to build around Joe Burrow and this defense is a big problem, this is something that seems avoidable, that it seems like they're focused on other things other than on-field success when it comes to negotiating these contracts.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So Stewart, there was a longer portion of that interview. He admitted it. I need to be. He said, I was in the SEC. SEC's really good, but it's not the NFL. So he realizes that. The other thing is, so Trey Hendrickson not taking part in mini camps. T.J. Watt of the Steelers not taking part in mini camps. You look at they're in that range where they want new contracts in the $35-40 million range.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about those veteran guys and you talk about the contract Myles Garrett just got in Cleveland, and he very well could have been a holdout if the Browns didn't figure it out as soon as they did. But I think it speaks to the general lesson in football with the way contracts are structured and set amounts of guaranteed money that guys don't want to leave any guaranteed money. They don't want to have any injury risk on the table going out here performing on the field, because we see it every single year, Dave. I mean, one or two guys in training camp and OTAs, a tear an Achilles and ACL can change your whole career in the blink of an eye. So these guys, I don't blame them one bit for chasing that guaranteed money. That goes for the veterans like Watt and Hendrickson. It goes for the rookies like Stewart and anybody else taken in any part of the draft, really. But because, so football careers are so finite for most guys, right? I mean, most guys, what's the average in an average NFL career? I think is 3.5 years. So they need to get as much as they possibly can while they're in the league. Most of them, it's not like, TJ Watt, he's going to end up with a 15, 16-year career. But even him, it could end tomorrow. That's just how football works. And you want as much guaranteed money as possible.
Do you have a sense at all? Do you think both those guys end up figuring out and getting it done? Or the Bengals have spent a boatload of money on Higgins and Chase in the offseason. What are your thoughts on it?
I think Watt will eventually in Pittsburgh. It just feels like he should be a lifelong Steeler, and it's not like they're paying a quarterback any sort of premium amount of money right now. They just have to figure out what the exact number is that he wants, and they've got a relatively expensive defensive line with Cam Hayward up there also. Hendrickson's the one at this point, even over here in Cincinnati, Dave. I really have no idea. I have no idea if he's going to play with the Bengals, if he's going to sit out this year, if he's going to finally get traded elsewhere, which if they were going to do that, you might as well have just done it before the draft. But he's the key piece on the Cincinnati defense, and yet they're playing hardball with him, and he's doing it right back, and it's hard to blame him. So Hendrickson at this point, it's been dragged on so long, this fight, that I don't really have a feeling any which way of whether he's playing in Cincinnati or whether he's playing somewhere else.
Well, let's turn our attention to the offensive line for the Browns. Dewand Jones asked how the offensive line is coming together during the offseason workouts.
A lot of guys were banged up last year, whether it was Joe, me, myself, Wyatt, Jack, and even Poe. That sucks when your whole five is banged up, and, we're healthy this year, and, we're just ready to work, honestly.
How do you feel?
I'm sore some days. I came off a broken leg. I'm not going to sit here and fake it, so it definitely gets sore some days, but, it's about just being tough and competitive and just fighting through it, just for your brother.
And Dalton, we talked about average quarterback play and what it would mean. What would that offensive line not showing the signs of age that they did last year mean for the Browns?
It would mean a lot because, like Dewand mentioned there, especially because of the injuries, and it's a veteran unit with 4 of the 5 starters going to be 30 years old on opening day this year. You can't have all those injuries and then all the ineffectiveness and getting your depth tested. So if they had a solid starting 5 out there, even if they just played an average level of football, it makes everybody else's life easier, right? I mean, you could argue that beyond quarterback, that your offensive line is the second most important thing on your offense. If they get better play than they did last year and those guys are healthier, and I even like the depth they have have this year better. You have Zach Zinter, another year removed from knee surgery. Tevin Jenkins, when he's healthy, is a good player, but he's got health concerns also. Cornelius Lucas, a backup tackle, has starting experience. So I think there is actually better veteran depth this time around if those guys do get hurt. But the impact of an offensive line going from bad even to middle of the pack is massive on the entire offense, right? Run blocking for your young running backs, pass protection for whoever in the world's going to play quarterback and executing in the passing game. So it's important. I mean, you can have a lot more functional offense if your offensive line even plays at an average level as opposed to the way it was last year.
Before I let you go, they're going to be relying, in all likelihood, 2 rookies. How big is the learning curve for a rookie running back in the NFL? And are these 2 guys, Sampson and Judkins, equipped to be, close to 1,000-yard rush, maybe even over 1,000-yard rushers?
Yeah, they're both workhorses, and they're both really physical. I like their ability a lot. I like Judkins a little bit better in the passing game. Sampson, just not a ton of experience. That offense at Tennessee didn't get him involved as a receiver a lot. I think the harder details for running backs in the NFL is 1, pass protection, because they're so often in college they're just not asked to do it. And 2, in the passing game, I think as runners, these guys are going to be just fine, especially in Kevin Stefanski's system, the way he runs it. It's very easy for running backs to acclimate themselves to it, right? I think even when we've seen when Nick Chubb was hurt the last couple of years and guys like Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman and some other guys have had success for Cleveland, it's an easy system to get into the running game. So I don't have any issue with them on the ground. The learning curve is going to be in the passing game as a receiver and in pass protection, but I think they're both very capable guys. They were 2 of the top 7 running backs in the draft for me. So they're both talented. They're both workhorses. They both got a lot of volume at Ole Miss and Ohio State for Judkins and at Tennessee for Sampson. So I think on the ground, if the offensive line is healthy, those 2 guys could have a lot of success this year.
Dalton Wasserman, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Dalton.
Of course. Appreciate you as always, Dave. Thank you.
Dalton Wasserman, check him out. Great stuff with Pro Football Focus. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.